Saving in video games has always been very important. On Game Boy games, for example, my Pokemon Red from my childhood. Well, the battery eventually died and my game file was erased. I'm sorry, Charizard, I didn't know. Since the beginning, saving games has always been improving. And in the beginning, well, there was no saves, arcade games. These games were made to take your quarters and try to give you game over to take more quarters, or whatever amount of money they took. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Space Invaders, we all know the classics. The saving was the name you input in the high score list. But in consoles, the first game that you had proper save files was The Legend of Zelda on the NES, on the cartridge itself, with pops and chips for the Super Cassette Vision as the first video game to save your progress onto the console in 1985. Before save files though, there were passwords, the dreaded password system. A few games used the password saves on the Atari 2600, all the way back then, but the games that I remember having password saves were from the Super Nintendo and some from the Game Boy games. I remember a lot of Game Boy Advance games used the password system, like Simpsons Road Rage as seen in a previous video that we made on this channel, by the way, not a plugin. It does feel weird that anyone can use your password and leave off where you left off. In portable games on the Game Boy, the password games were sometimes used in a way to save money, versus having to use a save battery in the game. At least on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, as the GBA used flash memory, as the batteries were used for in-game events and such things like that. With the portable and older consoles, the save was basically tied to the game, but then the memory cards were introduced, allowing you to take your save files anywhere with you. I used to take this thing everywhere with me. Keys, wallet, PS2 memory card with Budokai Tenkaichi 2 game save, check. The downside to these memory cards is, well, you can't save your game without one. When I got a PS2 in middle school, I ran into this scenario. I remember GameStop had a bundle for either the GameCube, original Xbox, or the PS2, and I think it was about 60 or 80 bucks, and it included the console, 2 controllers, 2 games, or something like that. I got the PS2, the 2 controllers, and the 2 games. The 2 games that I got was Jet Li, Rise of Honor, and Top Gear Daredevil. Kind of random, but they were in that basket where you can choose 2 games from. They were just random games. You know how it be. Hey, I was like 12. It was my first home console. My dad bought it on a whim. It wasn't even Christmas or my birthday or anything, so I wasn't going to complain. This was like in 2008, so the PS3 was already out, but I had a lot of memories on my PS2, including not getting a memory card that day. And I had to do the old leaving your console on with the TV off to resume your game when you got home from school kind of trick. The PS1, PS2, and the GameCube, the Dreamcast as well to name a few, used memory cards. The memory for the Dreamcast, or the VMU, had a screen and buttons, so it went beyond just being a memory card. But the original Xbox had onboard storage. The original Xbox is touted as the first console to have onboard storage to save games through a hard drive, although the Amiga CD32 had internal memory first in 1993, according to online resources. But it was a tiny amount, not enough for multiple game save files. The original Xbox also had ports on the controllers that you could purchase memory cards for, like the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 cartridges held the save data, but you could buy a controller pack to transfer your saves to another game. These memory cards were a necessity in this generation of console gaming, but the first system to use memory cards was the Neo Geo AES way back in 1990. Now that video games had gone to CDs, the memory cards were in charge of the save data instead of the old school cartridges, except in the Game Boy and DS games. Heck, even the 3DS games stored the data on the cartridges themselves, unless it's a digital game, and the DLC and extras are stored in the SD card. At least this is the info I found online, and my experience of, playing the DS and 3DS games and seeing the save files on the cartridges themselves when borrowing games. But alas, we arrived to the current technology, in-game saves, cloud saves, and data backups on internal or SD cards. I remember the Xbox 360 allowed me to log in to someone else's console, and I would have my account along with the game saves available. The PS3 also had cloud saves, and I found some articles from like 2011 explaining the cloud save features of the consoles. But what about the Wii? Well, Nintendo didn't have cloud saves on home consoles until the Switch, the current console. Once the PS4 and the Xbox One rolled around, the hybrid model of cloud saves and internal saves on the drive were the norm, except for the Wii U as I just mentioned. But what will the next evolution of saving be? Well, I think there will be no further evolution, except for small improvements to the speed and convenience of it, but in a sense, we already have the next step. The Switch, along with the Xbox One and PS4, and the new consoles too, have sleep modes. If I want to pause my game, I just hit the power button and the console goes to sleep, like when you lock your phone. I don't have to pause the game, and you can just resume exactly where you left off. Is this not technically saving your game? There's not save data being made or anything, but in a sense, I saved my game in real life, in real time. I can put the game down in the middle of a boss fight, or other places where you can't save the game. Older systems had this feature too, like when you close your DS, or the PSP had it as well. The only other feature I can see happening is maybe having save states on modern games, like emulators or like the Nintendo Online SNES games and other retro game collections that we see. But I don't know how feasible that would be, and it would probably cause more problems than fix them, and it wouldn't be for the best. We've all been there when you accidentally hit save instead of loading a save state, creating a state where you literally die over and over again because you saved the game right before. We might take saving your game for granted now, but it's come a long way. Oh crap, I accidentally saved this edit over the video. Oh crap, I accidentally saved this edit over the video. Well, I'm stuck in this loop
now, so I need to go call Dr. Strange.